There are so many powers and abilities that are showcased within Bleach, it's inevitable that some of them fail to live up to expectations and end up becoming completely forgettable. As much as I hate to say it, I could list a number of abilities that I guarantee none of you would be able to remember. A perfect example would be Zenosuke Kurumodani's Earthbending Zanpakuto, but at the same time, Bleach has its fair share of awe-inspiring powers that engrave themselves into the minds of readers. One such example is Byakuya Kuchiki's Zenbonzakura Kageyoshi. It's a majestic and grand power that can overwhelm an enemy by just looking at it. Then there are abilities like Aznod's The Fear, which embody pure, unadulterated terror. There are also abilities like the Almighty, which are so daunting in their conception, whereby simply understanding what the power does would be enough to reduce you down to a helpless state. Now, nestled within this category, you have Lille Barro's Schrift ability called the X-Axis. In this video, I plan on analyzing every instance that the X-Axis is utilized within the anime and the manga, breaking down everything from its debut appearance when it had tore through the ranks of the Zero Division, all the way up until how he uses this power against Shunsui. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to appreciate how the X-Axis ultimately evolves into something that is far beyond mere offense and defense, and how this Schrift ability actually shapes Lille Barro's role within the story. The X-Axis is more than just a weapon, it's a reflection of Lille Barro's ethos, and it's a testament to his position as Yhwach's first Sternritter, and how he embodies the divine will of Yhwach. So without further delay, join me in my complete breakdown and analysis of the X-Axis. Reflecting on Lille Barro's role during the 1000-Year Blood War arc is not just his powers that are the only aspects of his being that are shrouded in mystery, but his character is pretty mysterious in itself. I mean, outside of Hashward, the other Sternritter are not that extensively explored in the story. Kubo does try to do some damage control with the Sternritter by giving them entertaining personalities and by dumping some interesting lore about some of them, for example with Pernida, whose existence gives readers insight into how the Soul King's mind may have worked and how each separate aspect of the Soul King's being processes what was done to him differently. Contrastingly, you have Askin, who isn't very deeply explored, but on the other hand has a very fun personality which appears to be enough to secure his popularity amongst fans. In terms of Lille Barro, he is a complete enigma. This is unfortunate because he's easily one of the coolest designed characters in the story. His personality revolves almost exclusively around his unwavering devotion to Yhwach. Kubo portrays this single-minded allegiance impressively, but it also feels like a missed opportunity to delve deeper into Lille Barro's character. Now, turning our attention towards his abilities, Lille Barro's powers reflect this very same dedication on a thematic level. So in order to understand the X-Axis, let's look through every instance that is used throughout the story, as we unravel the full extent of the X-Axis and the implications for this formidable ability. The X-Axis first appears within chapter 604 of the manga. Its debut appearance marks a turning point in the battle between Squad Zero and the Schutzstaffel. After Yhwach uses the Ashwaulan to resurrect the fallen Schutzstaffel members, they proceed to prove to Squad Zero why they are the final bosses of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, as we see Uetsu Nimaya standing there with 2 holes in his shoulder. These injuries were sustained after Nimaya had literally single-handedly defeated all of the Schutzstaffel. Lille Barro's X-Axis Schrift ability was enough to leave me jaw-dropped. Nimaya assumes that the reason why Lille's attack was able to hurt him is because he has become stronger after being revived. But this is where Lille corrects him and gives us our first insight into the powers of the X-Axis, as he explains that while the Ashwaulan has made him exponentially stronger, the holes in his body were not as a result of this, but rather they were the result of an ability that he already possessed that he didn't have the opportunity to use earlier. He adds that Nimaya's body was not pierced by a bullet, as he fires another shot towards the creator of the Zanpakuto, as the attack appears to have been blocked by both Kurinji and Kiryu, but we then get the devastating reveal that the QUINCY's attack had penetrated both of their Zanpakuto and made perfect contact with Nimaya, forming a fatal hole within his chest. I want to really emphasize this detail. The attack from the X-Axis pierced through the Zanpakuto of 2 Squad Zero members, something which should be an impossible impossible feat for most of the characters within Bleach. Because if you recall, the toughness of a Zanpakuto blade is determined by the spiritual pressure of the user. So in order to pull this feat off, Lille Barro would have needed to possess an insane level of Reiatsu in comparison to the Zero Division members. It would be ridiculous to assume that Lille Barro possesses more spiritual pressure than the Zero Division members. So for this reason, his Schrift ability, the X-axis, must be the reason why he was able to break through their Zanpakuto. Lille explains that the X-axis enables him to uniformly pierce whatever exists between himself and his gun. This means that whatever he aims at is instantaneously pierced by the power of the X-axis. His attacks have no regard for mass, density, distance, and definitely not reishi, meaning that his Schrift ability will pierce anyone and anything within Bleach regardless of any power difference that exists between them. The X-axis is so unbelievably broken that it is, in my opinion, the single most powerful offensive ability in Bleach. And yes, I'm even saying that it supersedes Ichigo's Mugetsu. There is simply no way to outmaneuver the incredibly destructive power of this Schrift ability. And we can deduce all of this just from the first time that it is shown to us, as it's used to literally kill the creator of the Zanpakuto. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this Schrift ability, because as the story continues, we get much more of a deeper look into this power, and honestly, things just get even more terrifying from here. In chapter 645, Lille Barro decides to play sniper as he starts to take out the Shinigami one after another as they approach Yhwach's tower. This scene perfectly encapsulates the terror of the X-axis. The ease with which Lille dispatches his opponents is almost surreal, as it highlights his exceptional skill as a marksman, which combined with the X-axis creates an unstoppable force. Fascinatingly, we learn that these shots weren't even the full extent of the X-axis's capabilities. For instance, within the Can't For Your Own World light novels, we find out that the attack that he hit Hisagi with was able to penetrate through his Chain of Fate. This illustrates why the X-axis is so terrifying in the hands of Lille Barro. During Shunsui's battle against Lille, we learn some very cool details about how Lille Barro is able to fight. Apparently, the QUINCY fights under a self-imposed limitation because he believes that if he used the full power of the X-axis while fighting, it would be too unfair for the sinners that he is battling against. The statements that Lille made earlier in his battle against the Zero Division actually supports this, as Lille asserts that no opponent has ever been a challenge against his power. While this is a really nice nudge to the greatness of Shunsui, it does at the same time make the Zero Division look comparatively worse, because after all, they are supposed to be the most elite members of the Shinigami. The limitation that Lille places upon his power is associated with his eye, which is noticeably closed from the time that he's introduced. He reveals that it is the opening of this eye that unlocks the true potential of the X-axis. We're already familiar with one aspect of this Schrift ability. It is able to execute unblockable and unavoidable attacks that are able to pierce through his targets via his Reishi gun. However, the scope of this power extends far beyond this. When pushed into a tight spot by Shunsui, Lille discloses the full power of the X-axis, which remarkably enhances both his offensive and defensive capabilities. This power allows his attacks to pass through anything, while any attacks that are directed towards Lille end up passing through him too. This revelation is truly staggering, as the sheer power of the X-axis theoretically enables Lille to defeat nearly any character within the story. The possibilities are endless. Imagine if Lille with a single shot is able to destroy the Hokyoku, or even defeat a character as formidable as Aizen before he was transformed into an immortal being. Now, don't be surprised when I say that there is even more to explore when it comes to the powers of the X-axis. Lille explains his methodology of using his power, stating that he deems it to be unfair to use the full extent of his power within a single fight. But if he is pushed beyond a threshold of having used the X-axis 3 times within a single fight, only then does he justify it okay to use the full power of the X-axis. Now, this self-imposed rule doesn't stem from the inherent nature of his abilities, but rather from a personal code of combat that he adheres to. Now, this is really impressive when you consider the fact that he was fighting a character like Shunsui, and had still thought that it was okay to hold back against him just to have a fair fight. In addition to this piece of information, we learned that Lille Barro was the first QUINCY to be granted a Schrift power by Yhwach, and it's for this reason that Lille believes himself to be Yhwach's absolute masterpiece, as he states that he represents represents Yhwach's honor while he is fighting. In order to uphold Yhwach's image of invincibility, Lille Barro never truly exerts himself in a battle. This is something that sets him apart from the other Sternritter. Lille Barro's commitment to Yhwach is all that we really learn about his character, but I believe that there is so much more to him. I just wish that we had a chance to see this within the manga. Once Lille Barro is up against an enemy who is strong enough to deserve the full might of his X-axis, only then does he allow himself to go all out in order to utterly eradicate his opponent so that there are no witnesses to a power that is equal in strength to Yhwach's. So for this reason, Lille Barro is either going to instantly kill you in his base form or is going to completely destroy you with the full power of the X-axis. This aspect of his personality suggests that there's more depth to Lille Barro than meets the eye, and I'm convinced that Kubo wanted to do so much more with his character. Hopefully he has the opportunity to showcase more about him during Core 3 and Core 4 of the anime. The X-axis evolves into nightmarish territory when Lille Barro activates his holy form, as the Sternritter's power escalates to an almost unimaginable level, transforming him into a literal angel. And that's saying a lot because a lot of the other holy forms give their users angel wings and halos, but Lille's holy form takes it a step above this, because from what is known about angelology, the angels with the highest wing count have 6 wings, but Lille Barro in his holy form has 8 wings, which visually represents his extraordinary power. In his holy form, he retains his absolutely broken, all-penetrating offensive power, as well as his intangibility, which gives him incredible defenses. But in addition to this, he gains new abilities. One new power is aura immobilization, where enemies within a certain range of the activation of his holy form lose their ability to move, thus allowing the Sternritter to score a quick kill. Lille Barro is the type of character who's all about ending the fight as soon as possible in order to maintain the honor of Yhwach. He also gains an ability to teleport and manipulate light itself. You'll also notice that the holes in his wings are where his X-axis shots are fired from, further amplifying his angelic appearance. When Shunsui assumes Lille's defense was limited to physical attacks, he decides to use Hado number 78. Now it works just about as well as you'd expect. As we move on to the next phase of Lille Barro's battle against Shunsui, we begin to learn about some implied limits to Lille Barro's untouchable defense. With Shunsui now being the one who's pushed into our corner, he activates his Bankai, which is where we begin to see that while there aren't really any conventional means of attacking Lille, there are means of getting around his intangibility. Shunsui's Bankai reveals that Lille Barro's weakness may come from attacks that rewrite the laws of reality in a specific way. Attacks like Shunsui's Bankai, which turns the world into a stage of sorts where each individual act inflicts a different kind of damage onto his opponent. His Bankai completely circumvents Lille Barro's intangibility as it allows him to land a fatal blow. Now this is where things get even crazier, because while Shunsui lands this critical attack, Lille Barro still doesn't end up dying. The Sternritter ends up resurrecting himself, revealing yet another facet of the X-axis, as it bestows not only unmatched offensive and defensive capabilities, but it also grants Lille Barro a form of immortality. As a divine servant, a holy angel to Yhwach, he seemingly cannot be vanquished. His loyalty to Yhwach goes beyond mere allegiance. It's as if he personifies this devotion, a quality which is unmatched by any of the other Sternritter. It's levels of loyalty that rival the bond between Tozen and Aizen. Following his resurrection, Lille Barro undergoes a transformation as he emerges in a bird-like form with enhanced abilities. His light manipulation abilities soar to new heights, to the point that he can create massive constructs out of light, and he's able to create extremely destructive blasts with those very lights. This enhancement significantly amplifies both his attack range and potency. Furthermore, he gains the grotesque yet formidable ability to morph his body parts, enabling him to, for instance, enlarge his head for a better view of the battlefield, something that he would do to find his opponents if they are hiding from him. Now, with this new form, it appears as though he has lost his ability to teleport. Considering the tactical advantage that this power would have offered to him during his fight with Shunsui, I don't see why he wouldn't have used it, because at this point in the battle, he isn't really going to be holding anything back. So if he was able to teleport, then I think that he would have. Now, with the Issei family Divine 8 Mirror Sword, it presents a interesting plot twist within the story, which may reveal a vulnerability to the X-axis, but I doubt that this this can be considered a weakness with just the X-axis, because the Divine 8 Mirror Sword has a unique ability to mirror and counteract an opponent's strength with an equal amount of force. This means that its effectiveness is tailor-made for combating opponents who wield insane amounts of power. If the Shinken Hakyoken had been used against any of the other members of the Schutzstaffel, then the outcome wouldn't have been any different. Its inherent ability to reflect the strength of powerful opponents suggests that its success against the X-axis isn't a particular weakness of Lille Barro's ability. So the final aspect of the X-axis that is worth talking about is how it operates following the death of Lille Barro after he is defeated by the Divine 8 Mirror Sword. So we see him break apart and turn into multiple gigantic bird-like creatures that attack the Soul Society. He states that he's lost his halo, so he has effectively become maybe a fallen angel now. It's confusing as to whether if this new transformation was as a result of the Divine 8 Mirror Sword, or if this was an aspect of his X-axis ability. The more that you think about it, the more questions begin to arise. Would Lille Barro have been able to return to his base form in this state, or was he stuck in this form because of his destroyed halo? Which part of the X-axis allows him to create clones of himself if he gets killed in his second form? Why is it that he gains new forms after he dies? Would he have been able to achieve these new forms if he wasn't killed by the Divine 8 Mirror Sword? The X-axis, initially a straightforward ability, rapidly unravels into a very mysterious power. Among all of the powers within Bleach, the X-axis stands out as one that is desperately in need for more expansion and clarification as to how it functions. Thankfully, the anime adaptation of the 1000-Year Blood War arc is making changes to this, as we have already been showcased new facets of Lille Barro's abilities, like his intangibility during his extended battle against Nimaya. Now, while we had seen this feature of his powers during his battle against Shunsui, thankfully in the anime this occurs much earlier than it does in the manga. This is very promising, as it sets us up for additional reveals about the X-axis during Lille Barro's battle against Shunsui, which will be adapted in the upcoming core of the anime. I for one am really excited with all of the anime exclusive material we can expect for all of the battles and abilities that are going to be showcased across core 3 and 4 of the anime. The material that is adapted across the remainder of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime includes content that is desperately in need for expansion. So we've now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you think about the X-axis Schrift ability? What new information have you learned about this power from this video? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, then definitely let me know in the comments. And what are your theories about the new additions that they'll make about the X-axis in the upcoming anime episodes? Lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next one. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.